If you know anything about the Maya, you know that they are the keepers of time, they are the masters of time and timelines. This includes the time locks that are put on the different timelines as well. And they gave me a message to give to you. One day I was in Sedona hiking, and the Hopi also and the Maya came through. They basically took me through a tube and gave me this message to relay to you about moving freely and dream weaving. They are the master dream weavers also. And this particularly has to do with the different Fitzpatricks and history and what we were taught. We know very well that a lot of the history and what we were taught is not accurate. Some of it is accurate, very little of it, and there are things that are more so a representation of other things that took place, and even more so that goes into the future more so than the past. But that's something else entirely. Where really all of the magic is and the danger is what we were not taught. What the message is, and many are doing this subconsciously. There are many who do not realize that we are still doing this. This is a type of programming. So when we are looking at different Fitzpatricks, different people, different groups of people, and we are projecting a history or a belief onto them based on what we were taught, which is not accurate, that would keep us, our own self, on that false timeline. By assuming that somebody or a group of people went through something that they did not go through based on inaccurate history. And again, it's a projection that we are wanting to project that history, that experience onto somebody that they very likely did not experience. Not only them, but not only their own soul didn't experience, their lineage didn't experience either. So this is incredibly harmful and also dangerous. It is harmful because we never want to assume somebody went through something that they didn't. We never want to assume somebody and see them in a better light or assume they had it better and easier than what they had it. We also do not want to assume that somebody had it more difficult and be more empathetic towards somebody that didn't experience that at all. And this is dangerous because we can assume that somebody, we tend to hold people on a pedestal if we assume that they are a good person or because we empathize with them or sympathize with them. So what the minds were showing me is even them. But let's say that in marriage and relationships, if there is somebody that we really like and that we want to connect with, and maybe they have something familiar about them, so we might see them in a better light and hold them on a pedestal and overlook some things that we shouldn't be overlooking. And what the minds were showing me, they were saying, hey, not even us. And if you know anything about the Mayans, you also know that they are very trickster. For you to be anchored in your truth, or you have to be anchored in your truth for you to travel different timelines freely, or you're just moving around, hopping around on false timelines entirely. You have to be anchored in your truth. So when it comes to love, marriage, and relationships, what we were taught and programmed about love and relationships and marriage is nothing like what it really is. There are many who got into relationships and marriage because what they were programmed to believe it is. They got married, had kids, got divorced. Most people have gotten divorced and found out that they entered that contract, that timeline, that marriage because they were not living in their truth. It was not anchored in their truth. It was anchored on a false programming. So what happens if we are looking at the world and different people and different groups of people and different souls based on their Fitzpatrick, we're assuming this based on false history. That's not anchored into a true timeline. That is simply creating from a false timeline. But again, this is if you're doing this, but to who this would be your projection onto that person. If you are assuming somebody's soul or lineage went through a history that they didn't experience, or the other way. You cannot move freely through different timelines when you're carrying baggage, and these are ego blockages. These are locks when we are holding false beliefs. They are blocking us from getting onto the timeline and where we want to go. This is not only the archaeology and the geography of the map of Earth and the stars and the planets. Every heart has their own map. You want to be able to move and travel through this map freely, and you are not responsible for anybody else's history. So if we're projecting history onto people that they didn't experience, again, we're the ones that are the ones carrying this. This is messing up our own map. We're not responsible for other people's history, and they're not responsible for ours. And the truth about your history is where these begin to unlock. When the anchor is in false history, you cannot create timelines in truth, following your truth in your map from a false anchor. So the idea is to remove these anchors. Another thing that and this goes with their teachings very well, that they told me to make sure to relay to you, is to focus on the positive things. This is what the timeline keepers teach. To focus, we do not focus on the negative things of the past. We must face them. Just like when you have an experience and a memory and it was bad, you don't want to keep focusing on it. We want to focus on the positive. We can only face the truth in our own, and then again, what is revealed to us about others. But other people's history, you're not going to have other people's history revealed to you before your own has been uncovered, because you have to be anchored in your own truth to be able to travel and have that revealed to you, if that makes sense. If we're judging other people based on false history, we're not going to be trusted with it, because we're already coming from a distorted place. So the idea is to anchor in to your truth in your history and focus on the positive things. When you want to, instead of the negative things that happened in the past, in your truth and in your history. Your soul has its own history. The sun shines light on all different tribes, all different Fitzpatrick, all different animals. Not only some, not some more than others. This is your personal geography. And you are, once you awaken to the sun, you realize that you are on all of those geographies. You realize that they all came from the same place. That's the other thing. So the idea is to undo that programming. Just like how we were taught relationships and marriage were, and a lot of people took off from that and started creating a life from that. We want to undo that programming that tells us what other people's history are. What they also said is that this train has already been moving. It's already been moving. So if you have not yet jumped on it, it is time to jump on it now, because it's going fast and it's not stopping. What it also comes down to is that history is on a soul level. When we are clinging onto these ideas, onto people, even if it is what happened to that Fitzpatrick, that person, that's only a part of the full story. And it's important to understand this as well when it comes to our lovers. You don't really want to get married to somebody that you don't really know their soul history, not to mention a little bit about their family history, because we're all carrying that within us. Your history is in your soul. Your soul is expressed through every cell in your body. So yes, the family you were born into does play a part in your purpose here. We don't want to focus on the negative things. We want to learn them the truth. You have to accept the truth. You have to process the truth, and that's only your truth. You can't process false history, things that didn't really happen. There's no way to process that because it's not real. So you want to process when it's brought to you, the truth about you and who you are and your history, and process that. But even then, you don't want to focus on the negative things, because that's the anchor that you're holding on to. Those beliefs are anchors. So if we are anchored in that one time that person hurt us, and that's what we focus on, and that's what we think of when we think of that person, we're focused on the negative things. That's keeping us anchored to that timeline. And a big part of processing is also forgiveness, by the way. But it is not until you process it and forgive that the truth sets you free. But the Gemini, the aspect of Gemini is it loves to take the unevolved, is it loves to take things in logically and hear them and just let it sit there and then walk away from it or gaslight it or something else and not process it, so it's only one wing of the butterfly instead of both wings. You have to take in the information and you have to process the information and release it for there to be transformation. Otherwise, there's not transformation. It just sits there. And as long as it's sitting there, you're still on that timeline. You have to transform and process what it is to process on that timeline in order to move on to the next one.